Good morning.
Good morning. So happy to see you. Happy to meet you.
Nice meeting you virtually as well.
Yes. So people keep coming in and out, but we are there's about 331 of us in the in the
Oh,
group.
wow.
Yeah, in the group. So what happens is,
Okay.
but we have a couple of regulars. So it
Okay.
doesn't matter if it's just me and you or you and two, three of us.
No, it's fine.
Yes, I record, then we post in the main group.
Got it. Got it.
Yes, yes. So welcome. Let me see. Okay, I have 1 hour with you. So we have there's Lola here, and then there's Hemilin here too. So
Good morning.
yes,
Good
welcome.
morning.
And this is the first book I actually listened to twice, the audio.
Oh.
I liked it that much. And I liked it's a quick read. It's a quick
Thank you.
read.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the voices of the people, the narrators, not too bad.
Right.
I've listened to books where I couldn't finish because I didn't like the voices of the narrators.
Right.
Sounds good.
So, which name do you prefer, Lola or Omolola?
Either is fine.
Okay. So, welcome, Omolola Ijeoma Ogunyemi. Welcome to the Ottawa Black Book Club. My name is Louisa Ivaze.
Thank you.
So I write books. I write for adults and children. You can see some of my stuff there. But I'm not as famous as you yet. So, so we're getting there. So I'm the founder of the Ottawa Black Book Club. I started the book club because I was looking for a safe space of like-minded people to just read and discuss books. When I was looking for book clubs, I realized that all the other book clubs were unapologetically white. I just went, why not just get a book club where we just discuss books by Black and African authors? And that's how we started. And this year will be 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And we've had, this platform has been a blessing. We've had amazing people, Kennedy Ryan, Lawrence Hill, and all kinds of people. So when you responded to me, I was really, really happy. I said, thank God. So welcome again to the Ottawa Black Book Club. We meet on the last Saturdays of our book year is January to November. So we meet on the last Saturdays of every month. We are currently restructuring. So that's why we actually few. Yes. As at 2 months ago, there would have been more of us, but we've had to put a lot of things, checks and balances in. So we're still a work in progress. So so thank you. So what was your inspiration? First of all, the title of the book. Yes, I have a children's book on jollof rice. Mine is the best party jollof rice. So what was the inspiration for the title of your book?
Okay. Well, Louisa, first of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here. And so Jollof Rice and Other Revolutions is a collection of linked short stories. It follows some of the same characters through time and some of their ancestors and, friends and so on. And so the original title was just going to be the title for the second story, which is Jollof Rice and Revolutions. And that, so my just a quick, my editor thought that didn't want the title for the book to be the exact same title as the title for the second story. And so that's how it evolved to Jollof Rice and Other Revolutions. But if you read the second story, it basically follows 4 girls who meet in boarding school in 1980s Nigeria, one of the federal government girls' colleges. And there is sort of a demonstration, an event where jollof rice is essentially used to co-opt the movement. So it was kind of meant in a sort of humorous way. They're trying to, the girls are trying to get their demands met, and their principal is able to say, jollof rice, and people forget why they were doing what they were doing. So I kind of meant that in a humorous way, but in a more serious sense, jollof rice is one of the things that brings pretty much West Africa together. Originally created in Senegal, but now Nigerians think we make the best jollof rice. Ghanaians think they make the best jollof rice. Liberians think they make the best jollof rice. Sierra Leoneans have told me you haven't had Sierra Leone jollof rice, so you can't even talk. So everybody has their own, stakes their own claim as to who has the best jollof rice and what it means. But it's the one dish that kind of unites West Africa in some way. And so I liked having that in the title as well.
I think somebody should actually do something on the politics of jollof rice. Yeah, because when I was writing my children's book on jollof rice, I had to do research and find out the first person who prepared the first pot of jollof rice. And I found out it was by accident. Yes,
Oh, really?
Yes, that's her name. I'm going to show it to you. It's in my book.
Okay.
And down by she did it by accident. And then how jollof rice spread, through.
Took off. Yeah. Well, that was a happy accident.
Yes, to the new world and all of that. Okay. Anyway, let me go into the book. So I want to go from story to story. I hope 1 hour will be enough. But first of all, the style of writing, I found this very, very different, because the struggle I had with it at a point was, one, following the characters, remembering who was who, and timelines. Oh, are they teenagers here? Are they adults here? Okay, this person is married. Okay, who are these? Okay, this person has kids. So the style of writing, very interesting. I love. And so let me start with the first one, Adaoma. Until I went to do my first degree in the East, in Igbo land, in Oka, Anambra State, I had vaguely heard of, I think they're called female husbands.
Right.
Yes, when a woman can't produce kids, and then she marries a wife for her husband. So you wrote about that here. Talk to us about it here.
Yeah. So honestly, the inspiration for that story, inspirations for stories come from all kinds of places, but for me, it was as a teenager in Nigeria, talking to my mom and then finding out that my grandmother's older sister was married to a wealthy woman who couldn't have kids. I did not know about this tradition. So I was growing up in the West, in Ibadan. And that was just eye-opening for me. I didn't know any such tradition existed. And so that was part of the motivation to write. I mean, the story is fictional, but it was kind of inspired by this tradition. And it got me really thinking about the ways in which society pre-colonialism kind of adjusted for different things that happen to women or different factors in women's lives. And in my mother's hometown, the wealthy woman, because you had to be wealthy enough to pay the bride price.
Bride price, yeah.
The wealthy woman didn't still have to be married to the husband.
Oh.
No, they didn't have to be, because they might have already been pushed out for not being able to bear a child. So if they wanted their own family, they could do that. And what really struck me was that pre-colonialism, the biological father of the child had no rights. He didn't pay the bride price. He had no rights. The child is recognized as the female husband's. That to me was in town, he couldn't say anything. That to me was fascinating, because I couldn't even conceive of a Nigeria where that would be possible. But,
yeah, I found that out in the East, because I'm from the South. I'm from Edo State.
Right.
And I saw where you started the story about 8-hour walk to the Kingdom of Benin.
Yeah.
So I was trying to imagine. I was wondering, is she writing about Delta State or Onitsha?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Delta.
So it's Delta. And that's why, because a lot of the Delta, so even the traditional wedding, a lot of the things are borrowed from Bini culture. And I wanted to make that clear. So it's Western Igbo culture in a way. It's not Igbo culture when you cross the river Niger, because that's a little
because that's what separates them. And I know that Delta Igbos, both of them, they will tell you, we're not Igbo.
Right.
They feel like they prefer to associate with Bendel. I don't know. I don't know why.
Maybe. No, because some of the traditions. So my mother's hometown, for example, a lot of the traditions are they have an ESA. A lot of the traditions are borrowed from the Kingdom of Benin. They speak Igbo, but it's a mix of cultures. It's a mix of Igbo culture and older Bini culture. It's very interesting. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's very interesting. So for me, when I went to the East, to Anambra State, to school, that's where I heard about this.
Right.
Because I think for my own culture, what do they really do?
You might find out that there's something similar that doesn't exist now, but way back. If you talk
I
to some
know,
of the older folks, you might be surprised.
I know someone had told me that when there is no male child born in the family, maybe one person stays home, has kids, then before she's
Yes,
married.
that's the male daughter. Yeah,
Yes, the male daughter. Yes, I know of that one. But in the East was where I saw this.
the female husband.
This is the first time I saw a woman actually marrying a couple.
Mm-hmm.
There will be a husband present. Then you, as the wife, will marry that wife to
Right,
you have kids for your husband.
right.
Yes, that's yeah. So my question is, so why did Adoma feel the need to steal the child, to run away with the child? There was no need.
So I think part of the issue was that things were changing, and that's why I start with what happened to the Kingdom of Benin. So imagine you were a person at that time. That was sort of what a lot of the Western Igbo towns looked to, is what's going on in Benin. So if Benin fell, you're not safe. Here's this new religion, new traditions, new people coming in, and they're starting to question your culture. They're starting in the church. The guy's not giving her the respect that her townspeople give her.
Yeah.
And they're saying, what kind of marriage is this? And she's like, afraid she's going to lose everything she's worked for. It's an understandable fear, because nobody knew at that time where things were going to go. We didn't know, now we can look back and say, okay, here's where Nigeria has evolved to. But at that time, things are in flux, things are changing. And the Fodo now had the opportunity, because she really wanted to be with the father of her child. She didn't want to really be. So, and Adama is not stupid. She knows that. So she's like, that's what I want. I want my child. That's the one thing that I've that I still hold dear.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you for that. This is the first time I'm actually reading a story that explores that kind of marriage. I know I had worked somewhere where we explored different kinds of marriages in African cultures.
Right.
But people were more focused on widow inheritance.
Well, that is a big deal, though, across many different countries.
Yeah, people were more focused on widow inheritance. Okay, so let me move on to jollof rice and
Like
other.
someone has a question, though.
Oh, Laide, sorry, I didn't see your hand up. Laide, please go ahead.
Good morning, my ladies. So
Good
it's not,
morning.
I just wanted to add to that quickly so we don't get too carried away. So I know of a couple in Montreal. They've lived in Montreal, I want to say their first child is around 49, 50. So, and she was born in Montreal. So they're Igbo. I don't know what part of Igbo they're from, but I know for a fact that about 20 years ago, Madame went back home and married somebody for her husband, and that person was free to cooperate with anybody and just bring. Yeah, but the condition was they have to have her husband's name.
Yeah, to keep the line going.
Yeah, and this is like in the 2000s, like it's happening. So I guess that after being away from home for so long, they just wanted to do something to, and I thought, is that really possible? But now that I see the research and the book, it sort of, magnifies that. So, all right, we'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Laide. Yes, there are a lot of cultural practices, like traditional practices devised to address some of life's unfairness, which colonization has destroyed.
Because they didn't understand it.
Yeah, because they didn't understand a lot of these things. So we were not as primitive. We were not even primitive. Yeah, because you see, when people talk about colonization, I go, what is I did sociology and anthropology. So my question is, when you talk of colonization, whose definition? Colonization on your terms or my terms? Because the Benin walls are one of the few walls you can see from space.
From space, right.
So when you talk of colonization, whose definition? On my terms or your terms?
Yeah, but the real thing is that, it's a way to exploit resources. It's a way to sort of gain wealth and advantage while saying that you're helping to civilize, or civilize in quotes, somebody. But then you look at at the end of the day, the wealth is flowing in one direction. And till today, the wealth is flowing in one direction. When we talk about, a lot of people bemoan corruption and all of that in Nigeria, and people taking their money to the West, whether it's London, whether it's Swiss banks and so on. Can you imagine a setup where those countries had said, if you can't explain how you made your money, you can't bank with us? Would we be where we are? So it's still, everything facilitates that movement. And then they're like, oh, you're poor, you're third world, blah, blah, but they'll take your money.
They'll take your money, yeah.
They'll take billions and billions and then give you like 100 million in aid and be like, oh, we're giving you aid. It's like, help us keep the money in here. And we can take care of it ourselves.
Yeah, because I read where this prominent politician, I can't remember his name now, was saying that we have, despite the aftermath of colonization, if Africa doesn't wake up, they will come back again as investors.
Oh, not just investors. I mean, the sad reality for Nigeria today, I mean, I visit.
Yeah.
A lot of people's lives are so hard.
So hard.
And we haven't really absorbed the lesson from colonization, which is these are not your friends and they were not here to help you. So people will be like, you know what? I can remember things were a little better. Maybe people should come back. And it's like, wow. Because we still haven't internalized that message of it was not for your benefit.
For your benefit, yeah. Even the investments too, not for your benefit. Yeah,
Right.
not for your benefit. So
And isn't China already coming as an investor?
Yes,
Right.
and that's there are a lot of people who are worried about that. There are a lot of people who are like, well, they have a different style of what you might call colonization, but there are people who are worried about that. Because it's not a Western dominant approach. It's we're here, and maybe they never leave, and that's that.
Yeah. So I want to go to the second story. That's a story of that is actually the jollof rice. Yes,
Right.
Jollof rice and revolutions. So this is the story. This is where we meet the four central characters of this book. Yeah. One thing I noticed about this book, which reoccurs, is friendship.
Right.
Lola, is your hand up?
Oh, yes, please. Quick question. Does the first story, photo story, does it have any bearing on the second?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so one of the things I would like to do, because the can I share my screen quickly?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, please.
Let me see.
So the paperback, because you have the hardcover version of the book.
Share screen.
Oh, yeah. The paperback version of the book, because I had talked to my editor about this.
Okay.
And I said, I had a diagram of the characters and how they were connected. And he said, oh, I don't think people need that. And then after it was published, a lot of people, I was getting emails from readers. And I was like, I think they needed that. And I already had it. And we put it in the paperback version. So this is what I don't know if you can see this.
Okay, let me see. Okay, so Adama.
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, so Adama is married to Fodo. Adama is a step-grandmother of Nonso. Fodo is her biological grandmother. And then Aisha, Nonso, Remy, and Sholakwe are friends. Deola is Sholakwe's mom. Remy is married to Shegun, who narrates the chapter that's set in New York. And then Nonso is Blessing's employer. So just basically all the people narrating chapters, how they're connected to one another.
Yeah, we needed that.
We needed this.
We deduced that and drew that maps.
Right.
Yeah, this map should have been somewhere in the book.
Yeah, no, I agree. So it's like I said, it's in the paperback version, because I went back, I sent the emails to my editor. I'm like, I think we did need this. And he agreed. In fairness to him, he agreed. And so it got published.
I have a screenshot. We have a screenshot now. We'll insert it.
So I'm gonna stop sharing.
Okay. Yes, because my struggle was remembering, okay, who is who?
Right, and how are they connected? Right.
Yeah. So you explore friendship a lot in this book.
Yeah.
And a lot of us have had our fair share of good friendships, would have our fair share of bad friendship. Like I told someone, when you get to 40, I think you realize that you've made 90% of the friends you will make in life.
Right. That's a so true.
Yes.
Yeah.
A few, maybe one or two people trickle in, and then you continue your journey of life. So how important was friendship in as a vehicle for conveying this story? Because that's
It
what I feel. Relationships, yes, and interconnectedness.
So for me, it was this notion that friends are the family that you choose for yourself. You're born into a family and you love your family and all of that, but friends are the family you get to choose.
Okay.
And boarding school friendships are a little bit different, especially Nigerian boarding school.
I didn't go to boarding school, so yeah.
So it's almost like they're your sisters because they essentially see you through, we're talking about age 9, 10. They see you through all these phases of life. And for a time when you're in boarding school, you might even squabble like siblings, not really like friends.
Okay.
And
You're
after,
you're kind of
too.
growing up together in a way. So these are friendships that kind of last a lifetime. My boarding school WhatsApp, we like every week we monitor each other's birthdays, we go to each other's events. When I had a reading in Nigeria, they came. Like some people I hadn't seen in 30 something years, they showed up. They showed up for my reading at the Ake book festival. And that's just, it's this really strong bond that's very different from, I have other friendships from like, university and later. But that, people who saw you when you were a kid, before you had reached your full potential, they know your secrets, they know they know who you were. It's just really something I wanted to explore. And then you grow together. You might go in different directions, but you can always go back to a place where you were kind of more innocent, more innocent time. And it's nice to have that.
Yeah, I think that for me, in regards to friendships, I realized that the friends I knew from when I was 10, 11, when I started high school, the relationship is very different from the friends I met in uni.
Right.
You knew, even the kind of conversations you have, you are vulnerable. You are vulnerable with
Yes.
those who knew you. You don't need to censor a lot of things. Unlike when you meet your friends in university, you have to be the adult.
Yeah, you're trying to make a good impression and all that.
But those ones in secondary school, look, we have our secondary school group. We go there to trade insults sometimes, and we're all good. Yeah, so that's because but in all the friendships here, there were no fights, no malice. Which is strange.
That is not realistic. I agree. But I wanted to, because there's so much other sort of tragedy, and I wanted to explore the space of friends lifting each other up. But yeah, realistically, you also fight. You break up.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
Yeah, you don't
I
talk
totally
all the
agree.
time.
But I made a conscious choice to focus on uplift and sort of solidarity and people being there for you like family when you need it.
Okay. And then the death of Sholakwe, it triggered a lot. And I was actually surprised that, how the death of someone close can have an impact on the life of the
down the line. Yes.
Yeah, because for what's her name? Was it Aisha?
It was Aisha.
Who chose her career because that's what Sholakwe wanted to do.
Yeah.
What the death of a close friend has done for me is, I remember we're friends, we're from primary 4, and I was angry that he hadn't called me. So yes, I was angry. Oh, why won't he call to check in on me? You know what? I'm not going to call him. So a friend of mine said, you know what? I'm going to see him this weekend. We're going to go to the movies. And I said, when you get there, give me a call and let me give him a piece of my mind. He died the Tuesday before the weekend, I think.
Oh.
And since that day, for me, anytime I think of anybody, even if I haven't heard from you in 10 years, I just give you a call. Yes, I just call.
You don't know. Yeah, you don't know what people are going through.
Yeah. So I found that really interesting. So reflections from the hood. Okay, so that's that, because I'm trying to cover all the stories. Reflections from the hood of a car. When it started, I liked the fact that, yes, food, pounded yam. But then you brought in the police.
Yeah.
Then blackness. Because in America, I was listening to a man speaking when they were talking about the killing of Black youths. He said, now we are not fighting for what is right. We are just fighting for our youth, our children to come home. Come home first. So talk to us about reflections from the hood of a car.
So Reflections, I think it was first published in it was either 2009 or 2012.
Okay.
What's sad for me is that, at least in America,
Mhm.
there are people who think I wrote it in 2020, reacting to stuff in 2020. I'm like, it was published in either 2009 or 2012, which
Your
means
background
this
matter.
story has been happening over and over and over again, sometimes with much more tragic consequences. And I wanted to explore another thing. So the police, and there are many very, talented, able, non-bigoted policemen and women out there. So I'm not trying to point at individuals, but policing as an institution, when you look at it in Nigeria, the
Yeah.
police force, and you look at it in the US, there are parts of the US where the police came out of anti-slave, like slave patrols, like basically keeping
Slave catchers,
enslaved,
right?
yes, keeping enslaved people in check. And
Yes.
then you look at Nigeria, and the police did not start to be your friend. It was helping the colonial powers maintain control. I saw a parallel between the two, that even if people have good intentions, the intention for which the institution was set up still seeps through. It still comes through. So it still reflects some anti-Blackness, even in Nigeria. Even in Nigeria, it's not about helping you, it's about control, dominance, and how does that play out in the life of a Black man, a Black boy?
Yeah.
I wanted to explore that with Segun. So Segun is the only one who gets his story, the only male character who gets to tell his own story. And that was really because I felt, living in the US, my experiences with racism have not been as dramatic as, for example, my male siblings. And so I wanted to explore that in a way I didn't think that I could do with a female character. It's not that Black women don't face racism, but there's a overt hostility sometimes towards Black men that Black women don't often get, because people are not as maybe afraid of them. So I wanted to explore that through Segun's story. And I thought using the police in Nigeria and the police in the US as a connector was a way to do that.
Yeah. So now I'm trying to remember who is Segun married to?
Segun was married to Remy.
Remy. Okay. Yeah. So that is the issue I told you I had. Remember?
Yeah, no, I get it.
Who is married to who? Whose child is this?
Yeah.
Who is that? Okay. So guardian angel of Elmina. That old man that she kept seeing, was he real or was he a figment of her imagination?
He was essentially a figment of her imagination. So if you think, one of the connectors so that's Nonso. Nonso is Fodo's granddaughter. So if you read Fodo's Better Half, at the end, she has a vision of something that cannot possibly be there. Nonso has inherited that second sense of people who are not with us anymore. That's something that her grandmother has, that's something that she has. And that the site is a site of a lot of pain and distress. So I've been to both Elmina and Cape Coast castles in Ghana. And it's just, when they tell you the number of people who are in a tiny, it's just unfathomable. And this kept happening for years and years and years, a lot of pain for years and years. So she's sensing that. It's her way of sort of trying to understand what happened in this location.
Okay, because I was wondering, who is this man? And thank you for bringing that up. Okay, now that you said so, let me go back to the very first story where she cited Adoma in the
Right.
90s.
Right.
And then she got back home and her son, who Adoma had stolen, was there. So
Right.
I couldn't marry those two events because Adoma had died 2 days before.
Right.
So did she really steal her son, or it was also a figment of her imagination? And how did her son that had been missing for years suddenly reappear?
So the one explanation, people can have their own, but one explanation, at least when I was writing what I had in my head, Adalma doesn't see it as stealing her son. Under native custom, that was her child.
That was her child.
But
Okay.
she could see things are going to change. And these new people might not understand that this is my child. And they might say, you have no connection to this child.
Mm-hmm.
So that was her fear. That was her abiding worry. So that's why she took the child to Lagos.
Okay.
It wasn't fair because she wasn't thinking about Fodo or, anybody else's connection to the child. It was, all about her fear.
Mm-hmm.
But Adama is a wealthy woman. And so when Fodo and Ima do move to Lagos as well, they're trying to find the child. Adama is wealthy enough to know that they're there and is monitoring them, but without them being able to find her.
Oh, I
So
see.
when she is ill, she knows that Fodo will take care of the child. She knows the child won't be, she's finally ready to do the right thing
Okay.
when she realizes that she can't provide for the child the way she thought. She had never counted on her own mortality and what that meant for her son. So
Okay.
yeah. And then Fodo on her part has this sort of second sense, this sense about people who are no longer with us, which she passes on to her granddaughter.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it's not, obviously she didn't see the real Adama because Adama was already gone by the time she has this vision in the marketplace. And that's why nobody else sees the woman she's following.
Yeah, because
Everybody's looking at her like she's crazy, and she's like, that woman, and they're like, okay.
because from stories I have heard, when people see people who have passed away, they get home and they have a very bad fever.
Okay, I haven't heard that one.
Oh yeah, the few people when we're growing up, there was this man who was, I won't say close to the family, but at least I had seen him around a few times. And I remember when Lucky died, someone said they sighted him somewhere in town.
Right.
Yes, either the person is crying or he's walking away.
Right.
When my uncle passed away before I was born, but I remember my dad saying to me that my aunt had seen him crossing the road, and she came home and told their mom, and she was ill for the next.
Oh.
Yeah, they always say that, and I keep wondering, why do they have to be ill after that? Is it a shock?
Maybe, but I haven't heard about people being ill.
Okay.
I've heard about them seeing, but they're never able to catch up with the person or talk to the person. So they know it's the person, but there's never a conversation. And then they get somewhere else and they're like, what do you mean you saw this person has passed away?
Or you hear stories of people who have passed away, go to reappear in another city, get married, start a family, and the day they bump into someone who knows they vanish. They vanish. So that I don't know what that is.
Right.
That has to be done. Please, the floor is open for anybody who wants to ask questions. Lydie, I know you're there. Lola, I know you're there. So the floor is open, please. So Guardian Angel, because for Lydie, you joined much later. So I'm trying my best to go through all the stories in this hour that we have. So yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do. So just in case I miss anything, please feel free to come to jump in and ask questions. I don't like to monopolize conversations. So in this Angel of Elmina, I think you were exploring, Lola, please go ahead.
Yes, so Aisha had a similar vision at the end. So I'm jumping straight to the end here, I know, but she saw Sholakwe and I'm so sorry, but since we're talking about seeing dead people, she saw Sholakwe and her son. So did this mean that her son had died? And she
No.
dying?
That was a dream, not a vision. That was a little bit different.
Okay.
Like it's not like during waking hours. Like Nonso's is, during waking hours with other people who can't see the person. Her grandmother for those is in the marketplace during waking hours. Basically, she was kind of dreaming, but because of stuff that was happening to her.
Okay.
We'll talk about that one later.
Okay. So in this story, this Guardian Angel of Elmina, what I see here is it was almost like an exploration of place, space, and time, and how it informs how we view the world. That's how I saw it. Because starting from Igbo names and then talking about Yoruba in-laws, why not just say her in-laws? Why do you need to emphasize the fact that they are Yorubas?
In Guardian Angel of oh yeah, yeah.
Yes, Guardian Angel of Elmina, because there's a place here. Then you were, I think, yeah, you were talking about Ibadan. I visited Ibadan 3 times. My dad schooled in UI, so I don't really know
Oh, okay.
Ibadan. Yes, But you were talking about Ibadan. The way you're talking about it here, I could feel, I can walk to Kurumi Road to play with my friends, or I can walk to Alba Dam and sit by myself, looking at the waters of the lake. And in my mind, I was wondering, campus, yes, I was close to Uniben campus, then Zaria Ahmadu Bello, but not UI. People talk about UI campus like what is that thing there? What is that thing those of us who are not privileged or opportuned to grow up there miss? What is that thing? There seems to be.
I think it's just because it was the first, and a lot of resources were poured into building it. So there's a sense that I say it's a bit of a bubble. So many of I and many of my friends grew up on that campus, and it was literally our hometown. But it's not a realistic hometown. It's very different from, so once you get out of the gates, it's a little bit, it's different. The hustle and bustle of Ibadan, it's quieter on campus. It's just a different vibe, except when the students are rioting, then that's a whole different issue. But it was, it was this world unto itself. It had its own man-made lake. It had its own zoo. It had its own botanical gardens. It was just like very nice space to grow up in.
The first time I went to Ibadan was in 1993 when my dad worked in Osogbo. We went to the zoo.
Right.
As they went to the amusement park, and I was wondering, okay, so is this the Ibadan people keep talking about? Because Ibadan, it was that poem by Wole Soyinka, Ibadan, a running splash of rust and dust.
Oh, J.P. Clark.
J.P. Clark, thank you, J.P. Clark. J.P. Clark, yeah, that was my thing with Ibadan. But she says here, my mom says UI is not the real Ibadan, but I don't agree. Don't get me wrong. I like Bodija too, and Ashi Village and Agodi, but UI is my favorite place on earth.
Yeah, what does she know about anything else? That's where she grew up.
Yeah, because I was now wondering, I said, did we miss anything? Yeah, because people grew up in UI, UI, and I'm like,
yeah. And then people who grew up outside UI are like, that's not really better. You don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. So I'm just looking at it. So how do you think that place forms our view of the world?
I think place is very important. That's why the characters travel quite a bit.
Okay.
What you know, what you see, what you experience is shaped by where you are. Exposure to other places exposes you to other experiences, other cultures, and other facets of society. And I think it's really important. And so in the book, I really try to explore, it's a short book, so it's not as in-depth, but a lot of writing on Nigeria, I feel, focuses on Lagos. And while Lagos is represented here, there's many, Nigeria is a big country. So there's many places to explore. And each place has its own, its own charm, its own, the people, the culture, everything is kind of different in different places. And that's something to explore as well. But there's also another connection. So in Guardian Angel of Elmina, we get to grapple with, for a very brief period, with the transatlantic slave trade and what that meant. We touch on that again with Segun's story, because Segun, in the beginning, you get to find out that his great-great-grandfather was a returnee. When I was growing up, my brother had a friend whose last name was Marinho, which is a Portuguese last name.
Okay.
And there's a lot of people in Lagos and other places with, names like Da Silva, Marinho, Ferreira, and so on. And it took a while to make the connection that we had a whole group of returnees who were enslaved in Brazil, and when slavery was abolished in Brazil, in particular, people came back because they had maintained Yoruba or whatever culture they had. They kind of still spoke the language, a lot of them moved back to Lagos, for example, and they learned carpentry, they learned building, they learned all these skills that were actually useful back in the old world, which they had left. And so they reestablished, connections with, they came back from Brazil, reestablished roots in Nigeria, but they kept, the last names are what basically tells you about their journey. And many of their descendants kind of know those stories, but it's kept in the family. It's not something the wider Nigeria, it's not something you learn in school, but there's this migration, there's this connection between those who were taken, have come back, resettled, and I wanted to explore that as well. So Segun is a descendant of returnees.
Okay, because I didn't get that he was a descendant of returnees.
Yeah, so it talks about his great-grandfather. It talks about his father going to Brazil out of curiosity because he's heard the stories about his ancestor essentially being enslaved there, getting his freedom and deciding to return because he still speaks Yoruba. He has an idea of where he came from. He can't remember the name of the particular town. But when he gets to Lagos and he hears Yoruba, he's like, okay, might as well settle down here.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I think the first book I read that explored that was Saru by Nite Patoki Campbell.
Oh, I haven't read that.
So we had her last month. Yes, we had her last month. Yeah, I think that explored because it was her family history.
Right.
Yeah, because I used to be curious about those names, right? I used to wonder, why do they have such names? Right. So I thought it was the people who had settled here that changed the names. I didn't know that they were returnees. Okay.
Right. A lot of them are returnees.
Yeah, and I liked how you explored different, African countries, and then you touched on Mansa Musa. And yeah, and I like the part where you said, he says Ibn Battuta traveled to Mali in the 1300s by camel and met, let me see, I want to go to the part that, He says Ibn Battuta traveled to Mali in the 1300s by camel and met Mansa Musa, the king of Mali. Mansa Musa went from Timbuktu to Mecca for Hajj and gave away so much gold that the price went down across the world. That was, I when I read that, I felt like a child and I'm like, yes. Rather than say this is who we are, someone will say this is who he is.
That one is a shout out to my history professor. So I went to FGGC Oyo, and we had this history professor, the history teacher, sorry. And he used to, he'd be like, Ibn Battuta, he would keep telling us these stories, and they stuck.
Ibn means son of. That's what Ibn.
Yeah, son of Battuta, yes.
Yeah, because in sociology, we studied Ibn Khaldun.
Yes, he actually taught us about Ibn Battuta, Ibn Khaldun, and some other. He wanted to focus on non-Western, so oral traditions about our history, but then also non-Western travelers who had written about Africa.
Yes.
So he's like, here's what they wrote in Arabic. Here's a translation, and this is very different picture of Africa from what we hear over here. And I thought that stuck with me. So he did his job.
Yeah, because my professor would say those days that the history of Africa written by white people, that those people were armchair theorists. They wrote based on hearsay, not what they knew or what they had experienced. Right. So that's why
people who traveled and stayed with different places and kept writing their impressions.
Yeah. So my children's series, I'm trying to educate children about the continent of Africa. So we are now getting to tell our stories ourselves. Yeah. Exactly. So I liked that. When I read that, I went, yes. And then you just went through this story itself was just a journey through different.
Yeah, it was.
Yes, of Africa. So let me go to, okay. So yeah. So this one, you made it clear that it was a figment of her imagination. Goody. Even though you wrote Diola here, I felt you were trying to tell us about Sholakwe.
Yeah, but from her mother's eyes. Yeah.
From her mother's eyes, yes. The kind of child she was. Because I felt, she died, okay, asthma attack. But I was just curious until I got here. Who was she? My friends will be wondering, oh, this girl, who was she? For her to just pass away, was her life, her life was just cut short. Wasn't there any purpose? Then until I read that and I went, oh, okay. She was quite feisty in her own little way. Okay,
Yeah.
this was who she was.
And
Okay.
then you see that yes, her life was cut short, but it impacted all her friends
All her friends.
down the line, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she came, I mean, she was around for a very short time, but she left, you know, a lifelong impact on, had that impact on people and so on. Okay. The Shekolada, am I saying that right?
Chocolata, yeah.
Shekolada. So why did you need to ruin the fantasy for all of us?
Ruin which
Lola,
fantasy?
that's the one where she met the druggie who stole her money, who stole her purse. You know, when I started, so when I started reading this, I was like, okay, oh, she's met this guy. Oh, wow. And then she starts looking for her purse, and I'm like, no. No. I'm like, no. And then she noticed, well, as soon as you mentioned the needle marks, because when he kept scratching, I thought,
there were hints all the way.
I just assumed that, okay, maybe he's staying in a cheap hotel, like a tourist, Then she noticed the needle marks. And I said, as soon as I just saw the needle marks, I said, oh, no. Why do you feel the need to ruin this would have been romance for we readers? Why?
No. It's not. So the romance was always supposed, and it was really supposed to be about her ex, because the real reason that she separates from her ex, at least for that story, she's trying to live Sholakwe's life.
Like,
She's carrying this guilt. It's not really, and I don't know if that came through. It's not, law is not her passion, right? She's doing this because, and her boyfriend is trying to say, why are you you live your, like, she's confided in him enough for him to know that she's doing this for this reason. And he's like, no, like, I don't think that's right.
Okay.
But she doesn't want to hear that because she's in her own way trying to honor her friend. So she meets this person in Krakow. And one of the things I was trying to do with that story, I have been to Poland. Okay. Something that tends to happen if you're English speaking and you're a tourist in a country where the primary language isn't English, and where there's not a lot of Black people, because you could go to France, but there's a lot of if you go to Paris, there's a lot of people who are from West Africa or North Africa or whatever there. So there's this sense of isolation. And when you meet people who speak English, you kind of bond with them very quickly, more quickly than you should. And you start to try to trust them faster than you should. So it's not that anything happened. I mean, I enjoyed my time in Poland, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it was just really jarring in many ways. Like I went, I went with my Nigerian passport and I had a US green card. So you have to go through this whole process. You have to show that you have a job in the US. I was teaching in Boston at the time. And you have to show everything in order to get the visa to go to Poland. So I get there and then they're like, oh, why are you? And I was meeting friends and they're like, oh, why are you here? And I'm like, I said that in the visa application, same reason. And they just kept going back, 1 hour later, I'm like, can I call my friends? They're like, no. I'm like, you can clearly see that your consulate gave me the visa, and I'm coming from the US. Finally, I got so fed up. I was like, excuse me, when is the next plane back to the US? I don't want to be in the country anymore. And then the person called their supervisor. Then they got really, they're like, oh, no. I'm like, no, I'm really serious. It's good. Then can I just, and so that was the opening of my visit to Poland. I know it's the green passport sometimes you get some very sort of atrocious treatment. Yeah. But so that was the opening, but then I went on to have a really good time, but there was still that sense of, okay, this is definitely not my country, and they're not used to people who look like me.
Yeah, like, people almost
if you go to London, nobody stares at you. If you go to Paris, nobody stares at you. There, people stare at you because it's like,
People wanting to dance with her, and that man, you, me, dance, and his wife, and then his wife had a company.
That happened to me. That was not fiction. So some of it is fiction, some of it is based on actual. I was like, what is going on in this place? But you know, they weren't being malicious. Let me be very clear on that. They just, you know, I have an aunt who is German, and the same way she's like, well, Nigerians do that too because they follow you around when you book Pepe. And she, you know, when she first started living in Nigeria, it would upset her. And then
village food right now.
It's like people look at difference and they're like, oh, but after a while she realized, okay, they don't mean anything by it. Yeah. So it was just that kind of surreal, like you just kind of feel, what am I doing here? And I was exploring that. I think Laide has a question.
Yeah, Laide, please. Laide, I was waiting for Lola to finish talking before you. Laide, are you there?
No, yeah, I am. I was sorry about that. I was just going to say that let me see. It's been a minute. So I think it was about I forget her name now. The lady who was studying law because
Aisha.
Aisha. Okay, so she never really did confide in the guy that the reason she was studying law. I mean, they had a lot of conversations and they know each other, and he knew that wasn't her passion, and she was running away from it, running away from the actual reason. You know, when somebody sees you, the one person who sees you is who you're hiding from. You know, and for a while that was a source of friction between them, unspoken friction. That okay, well, why are we not getting along? It's because you're doing this thing for the wrong reason. And then I think they broke up for a while. That's when she traveled, was it?
Yes,
or
I met
right. And then when she did come back, when she did return, it was Andrew, right? When she did return,
no, he comes to Poland to meet her.
Exactly, he comes to rescue her.
Yes.
Right. And then where's my camera? Sorry about that. He comes to rescue her, and that's when she really did say, you know what, you were right. I'm doing this for the wrong reasons. So I resonated with a lot of the stories from boarding school. We look like we seem like we're around the same age. So he grew up at Ibadan, so you know a lot of people that I know. So I sort of resonated with a lot of stories from the boarding school, the lifelong friendships, and in boarding school, the children born with privileges and sorry, the children born with privileges and all of those things. But the relationship aspect of it just like magnifies how, yes, we can all get along if we're just bold enough to live our authentic life. You know what I mean? Like this relationship could have survived longer, and maybe the quality could have even been better if we're all, and that's for all of us, if we're bold enough to just say, you know what, I'm doing this for my friend, and then you can do that thing for your friend. Because all of these people lived with a lot of guilt for a long, long time.
Yeah. And we don't do a lot of here. They would have given them like trauma therapy or whatever.
Thank you.
We don't do that. So
yes,
they're holding on to this, and it's manifesting in weird ways. Well,
exactly.
Right.
And with them being very young at the time, those were formative years. Like you could have told me at that age that I was the reason that Babangida killed Mama and Vasta. I'm giving away my age now. But you could have told me that, and I would have believed it.
Right.
Just because just because I was maybe mean to his daughter in school or whatever, or his daughter was mean to me and I didn't really wish her well. So yeah, so thank you I'm a huge fan of yours, because again, I thought you were a scientist, right?
Yeah, I am a scientist.
I know you are, but I want to know how you're able to balance that. Like what the cognitive dissonance is going on. Like as a science, you know what I mean? Like, I don't mean this in a bad way. Like,
No,
so
I
it's
know.
really commendable. Like, you're writing a book, you're writing literature, and it's not based on the things that you actually went to school for. Very impressive. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, lady. And I'll answer that in a second, but it's Lola had a question in the chat that they broke up again at the end. So I'll talk about
Dr.
that.
Lola is next.
Okay. So so one of the things,
Okay.
obviously I grew up in around the same time that you that you did. And the book really does try to explore this notion of trauma and unaddressed trauma and how different people process. The friends all process the trauma of losing Sholakwe differently. Aisha takes it the hardest because she's a person of privilege and she feels that she could have prevented, she feels because of who her father was and all of that, that she uniquely could have prevented what happened to Sholakwe in a way that maybe Nonso or Remy could not. And so she's carrying a burden that is not really hers to carry, but it manifests in her life in very sort of interesting ways. So Andrew, the person she ends up marrying and divorcing, is from Poland. So her whole going to Poland in the first place is probably because she was still curious. She wasn't completely done with him. She goes to his hometown. She finds excuses to find out more about him and his people, even though they're supposedly broken up. So that the story with Todd was never going to be a romance. It was more about I know. So other people read that like, why
Did he have to be a thief?
no, but I don't see. So I see Todd as a person who is hurting in his own way. You can't trust what he says because a lot of people who are substance users will say anything to be able to get,
I already fell for everything he said.
their next fix. But the thing is, there's still a human being under there that something happened to, and whatever trauma he went through, there was something about him that resonated with Aisha. So she feels really betrayed when she finds out, okay, I don't even know what I can believe of anything that he said. But there is a vulnerable human being under there. And he did return her. He could have still lied and pretended that there's still some good there, is what I'm trying to say, even though he did what he did. For Andrew and Aisha, so they do get married. This is answering the last question from the chat.
Yeah.
The last story is set in 2050. And essentially it's kind of a speculative fiction type of thing where the US has basically gone down the path that it looks like it could go down, where you essentially have certain states doing their own. I don't know how familiar, I know you all are in Canada, but I don't know how familiar you are with what's going on in the US in terms of, red states, conservative states, and blue states. And the idea that, states can create their own laws, and the Supreme Court is in favor of loosening a lot of things, but there are implications for a lot of things. For universal healthcare, there's states that want universal healthcare the way Canada does, and there's states that don't want that feel like healthcare is not a right, it's a privilege. And so what happens when you have a country where one state has universal healthcare and the other state says, no, you get to pay for all your healthcare. If you have cancer and your bill is $10 million, okay, you got to work that off. You have to pay off your debt. And nobody's saying, well, why should your bill be $10 million in the first place? That's ridiculous. And so Andrew is in the 2020s trying to prevent that kind of future. So he and a group of friends, they're basically trying to fight what they see as a fascist movement and what they see as a white supremacist movement. And these are men who have kids that are not white. They have biracial kids, and they can see that this future is not going to be good for their descendants. But he and his friends don't succeed, and they end up going to jail. That's how Andrew ends up in jail. So he ends up in jail, essentially fighting for his son's future in a larger sense. Yeah.
So last stop Jibowu 2005. That's when I think Nonso makes up her mind to come back home. Then she and Dwayne's relationship, what I gathered, because I had to listen to the book twice. I listened to it the first time and I went, no, I still have to remember who is who. I know that Nonso and Dwayne had no kids.
Right.
I wish they had. Yeah, but they had no kids. And then she made up her mind to come back home. So
well, she was actually just supposed to be visiting. Like she hadn't decided to she was going to go for, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks and return to the US.
I see.
And then when she's in Nigeria, she decides to stay. That was not part of the original plan.
Part of the original plan. And she was still married to Dwayne. Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's like living together apart.
Pretty much.
Okay, Laida, you want to ask? You have a question?
I think there was a hand up from before.
From before. Okay. Yeah, because I was just looking at it and I was wondering, okay, let me see. I don't know if I really have much about that story to ask, but I want to go to Remi's relationship with her dad.
Yes.
So I'm very close to my father. So when that phone call and her thinking through life and all of that, and then confronting her father, one thing life has taught me is one thing we think we have in life is time, and that is something we don't have.
Right.
So many times, it's good to even forgive without getting an apology. Yeah, there are no hard and fast rules for the perfect parenting. There is no guidebook for that, and many times we destroy ourselves based on assumption. So here she was assuming all these things about her father. And then when her father responded, it broke me because I went, he too was dealing with his own stuff. Even though I didn't like his wife. And yes, I don't support being disrespectful to your elders, but I was happy she gave that to that woman. Yeah. So talk to us about that relationship between she and.
In fact, one of the book club questions that I have for this book is, do you really believe that she will never talk to her father again? And it's really interesting that there's nobody who believes that she will never talk to her father again. So in other words, most people believe that it will be resolved somehow beyond the story.
Of course, because he's her father.
It's really about the hurt. He's not there for some of the he's Nigerian parents like believe in education. He's like, pay your school fees. But he's not about the kind of day-to-day. My friend died. You don't even know some of the things that really matter to me, because you're all about study and read your books and education. And so part of what Remi is going through is that she wants that too. And she can see her friends have some of that. So it's not like there are no Nigerian fathers that do that. So her whole thing is that she wants a father who is as engaged as he was before, because there was a time when he and the mother were together. The parents divorced, they're apart, and he's like, you have a new father, let me just stay over here. But that's not what his daughter wants. And it never occurs to him to try to figure out what is the best thing for my daughter. What does she want? It's not a conversation that it would even occur to him to have. So he's not a bad person. I agree.
He's not.
But it's not what she wants something more from a father-daughter relationship than, I paid your school fees. Okay, now help with your siblings. And that's not an unrealistic thing to want for a daughter to want.
Okay, so this is.
And you're close to your father. So you're close to your father. Imagine if you weren't, but you wanted that closeness. That is Remi's story.
This is me being the devil's advocate here. Okay. How do I frame this question? This what I'm going to say. The luxury of her desiring that kind of relationship. The luxury of her desiring that kind of relationship, because
she's an only child.
Yes, but
She's
I
not
had,
a child from her mother. She
friends who didn't have conversations with their fathers.
right.
But the man did what he felt as a father he should do.
No.
I'm
And
happy to debate on
I
stage.
agree. And that's why I give the father's perspective. I could have given the one side from Remy and be like, her father's horrible. When you see her father's explanation, you're like, oh, is she being unreasonable?
Because
But the thing is this, the way a person feels is the way a person feels, right?
I agree.
It's hard to tell somebody the way you feel is wrong.
So is the father expected to tell her he's sorry? He paid her school fees. You know, it's like saying, okay, I'll give you an example. Oh, I'm in this terrible marriage, I'm in this terrible situation. The first question you'll be asked is, does he give you money for feeding? Yes. Does he pay the children's school fees? Yes.
No.
Does he beat you? No. So why are you complaining?
No.
A lot of people do that in some societies.
I don't subscribe to that. That's
Yeah,
something that really bothers me when
I don't
educators
do
go
that,
there, because
but-
there's something about personal happiness that you can't see somebody who's looking beaten down and just miserable and be like, oh, you have check. Okay, what's the issue?
But I
There's
think she was too
still
hard on- I
something.
think she was
There's
too hard
still
on-
something there. Yeah.
I feel she was too hard.
Oh, somebody in the chat says, I think that's why communication is important. Yeah,
So
definitely.
Bukola just joined. Yeah, Bukola
Yeah.
is joining us from the UK.
Okay.
Yes, but I felt she was too hard on her father. I mean, as a mother, I appreciated the fact that she was open to the fact that one of her sons liked dolls.
Yes.
I was very surprised, liked dolls. And I was touched when he liked to sing and dance, and she said he should sing and dance for her. And his teddy bears. And later in life, we see that he's married to his husband and they've adopted a baby.
Because she recognizes right away that, and she's like, okay, I'm going to accept my son as he is, the way she wanted to be accepted. She's trying to model a different way of parenting from the way she thinks, you know.
Which was good for her children too. Because look, they say two wrongs don't make a right, right? Yeah, so she felt her father was this way, but I felt that it was good that at least she spoke to her father. She said, this is how I feel. A lot of people never have that opportunity to
Right. No, I get what you're saying.
And that's why I say sometimes, you think you have time, just forgive. Nobody is perfect.
It's really hard for people to forgive, though. It's harder than you think. For people
you don't forget. You forgive, you don't forget.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Yeah, you forgive and you don't forget. But maybe because I feel that life is too short for you to just sit down. Bearing a grudge, right? Bearing a grudge towards someone who doesn't know you have a grudge is like you taking poison and hoping that person will die.
Yeah, because they don't know. Yeah. So the whole thing is that she should have spoken up years and years and years before, but she didn't.
Exactly.
For a reason. She's quiet. And so when it finally happens, it's this big dramatic thing, at least for her. He doesn't know. He doesn't know because she has never said anything.
Never said anything. Yeah. Okay.
Laide says forgiveness is overrated.
See, sometimes that's
what I've heard people say is
Listen,
that
I give it
forgiveness
to
is
you.
not for the
I am
other
always-
person, it's for
it's
you.
for you.
It's
It's
a
for
lie.
you.
It's a lie.
It's
I've
for
heard
you.
That's debatable. Personally, I don't forgive. I just move on and just leave you where
I
you
forgive.
are. That's all.
I forgive. The only thing is this: forgiveness granted, access denied. Yes. Oh yeah, that's how my forgiveness works. Forgiveness granted, access denied. Yeah, because they tell you that when a snake sheds its skin, it sheds its skin to become a bigger snake.
Right.
See, a lot of folks
Yeah.
we say that they're forgiving, but it's a lie.
No, they
For
don't.
me, forgiveness
No, they can't
requires
forget, and that's the thing, because it's
yes, exactly.
Forgiven, but
So
they've not forgotten.
I am authentic with myself.
Mhm.
Forgiving you means that I will give you another chance. In my mind, I will not think about it again.
No.
I will not
okay.
use it again.
Yeah,
I will not
for
use
most
it against
people, that is too difficult.
you. Okay, and
No,
but for me,
I can't do that. That's why I said forgiveness granted, access denied.
Yeah.
So let's continue to thrive. I wish you well. I wish you
Yeah.
eat, but not at my table. Go eat on the other table. Go be good all the way on the other side. Peace. When we bump into each other, how are you? Because if you keep telling yourself that people keep acting like clowns around you, ask yourself too, why do I keep going to the circus? Why do I keep showing up there? So for your mental health, you have to find out what works for you. And it depends on what it is. There are things, I mean, nobody is perfect, right? Yes, we forgive, but there are some kind of things you just tell yourself, you know what? Forgiveness granted, access denied. Go be good, go and thrive somewhere else. So area boy rescue.
Yeah, just as Bukola in the chat said that, and I think I agree with this. I think people find it easier to forgive after they have been heard and understood.
But when you don't have that opportunity to be heard, not understood, what do you do?
It's hard for people to forgive. It is. And that's human. That's part of being human. We hold on to our hurts. We remember, I think it's part of the human experience to remember the bad things that happen more than the good. How many times, in a day, like you might have like 3 people say, "Oh, I like your shoes, I like your hair," and then somebody says something mean to you. And at the end of the day, that's what you remember. That's human nature.
Yes, but
fortunate. And so,
it teaches you how to be guarded. It's like, if you look at like this book where you explore friendships, and I asked you, I said, how come in all these friendships, no clashes, nothing?
No, and that was a deliberate choice. It's not that they didn't have, obviously they would have had clashes, but that's not what I chose to focus on the page, because there was so much else going on.
Yeah. So if you look at it in terms of, if I look at friendship in terms of forgiveness, I've learned through the years to compartmentalize my friendships. So yeah, so there are people who do certain things and I'm like, oh, it doesn't matter. But there are some who do certain things and I'm like, no, I gave you that access. So it's like you have the kind of friends, these kind of friends I discuss money issues, this kind of friends I discuss relationship. These ones, yeah, we just talk all sorts of things. So your gist partners have no business knowing anything about your personal business. For me, that's what works for me, I realize. And yeah, so that's why it's easy for me to say forgiveness granted, access denied to all these other ones on the side. And I also learn to take blame and responsibility. Okay, first of all, Louisa, it's your fault that you did X, Y, Z. But again, the thing is, we're human. And through the years, growing up, I used to be like that. I would hold on to things. I would be angry and be burning. And then centuries later, when you meet that person doesn't even remember.
No, right.
So these days, I just tell myself, you know what, forgive and let go. Take it to God, and then you move on. Yeah. So area boy rescue, blessing. Blessing. I love blessing. Why did you feel the need to bring in this kind of character? Like a maid. I don't know. I love her. I just love her.
It's really, it's funny. It's visiting Nigeria, visiting friends who had, house helps and all of that. But also, after living in the US for a while, you start to look at things from a different lens. And there's this whole thing, because Blessing's story is really, yes, there's the entertaining thing of she thinks her madam is crazy and then she's like, maybe she's not so crazy, blah, blah. But there's an underlying story of a young woman who is essentially exploited. This thing of the man of the house decides, okay, yeah, I have access. And she doesn't like her, but she doesn't like her madam, so she's like, okay, fine. But what if she did like her madam? She would still be in the same situation. Like the whole notion of the imbalance of power and her ability to really say no is not that strong, And then the thing of always blaming the woman. It's like the woman comes after her, doesn't face her husband, like, why are you doing this? And that is really common. That's what really tends to happen. It's like you focus on the symptom and you don't go to the root cause, which in many cases is like, why is he doing this? This person is young enough to be his daughter or even younger than his daughter, Seth. And so it's Nonso is seeing this with maybe American eyes and decides, I'm going to protect this person. I'm going to show her how to invest. I'm going to send her to sewing school if she doesn't want to go to, traditional school, whatever it is, so that she can be independent on her own. Because it's something that my friends and I talked about, especially those who moved back, this jarring thing, and how you navigate that.
So she's one of, so I will say that she's one of Blessing is one of the lucky ones.
Yeah, exactly.
But when I read the story, the lens through which I saw it at the point, I was asking myself, this girl seems quite simple. Could she be on the autism spectrum? Because she was almost childlike.
She's young.
Yes, she's young. I mean,
young.
almost very, 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 very childish. And in that situation where you said, where Mrs. Fakitong blamed her for seducing her, no, that's look, if you grow up in Nigeria, that is very, very normal.
Yeah.
That's not strange. And growing up as a child, that was something I always asked myself. The girl didn't make any vows to you. She didn't stand before God, go to the altar. Why not challenge your husband? Why do we as women keep fighting each other? It's always, you will not break my home, you homebreaker, you husband snatcher.
Because it's easier.
The man,
it's easier.
I don't understand. Why when it comes to the man, you will say, no, it's the devil. But the wife that was caught sleeping with her houseboy, she's immoral.
That would be the scandal of the century.
So why do we like?
And nobody was going to say, "Oh, forgive." Don't.
Is it a way of dealing with emotional and emotional trauma or mental torture? Because I noticed that among a lot of women, it's you find out your husband or your partner is cheating on you with another woman. You go fight that woman. Why? And then you come back home to that man. So maybe to gist him, I don't understand. But why? Why don't we face reality? Is it too painful? Or is it, because these things, then through the years you internalize, you keep and then one day you erupt. And people go, oh, are you doing this just because of this little thing that happened?
When it's an accumulation of
years, 30, 20, 30, 40 years. Because it's like sometimes you look at it and I ask myself, our grandmothers and our mothers, did they stay with our fathers for 20, 50 years because they loved them, or as a sense of duty, or just because of the children? Because if you ask them and you say, Mommy, tell me honestly, stay with this man and endure everything you endured because you loved him, I feel the answer is I'm afraid of the answer. I'm afraid.
One of the things, and you just bring up a very interesting dynamic in Nigeria. Nigeria is a very patriarchal society.
Oh, very, very, very.
And you will see that even a woman's friends, even her circle, will be the first to say, oh, but that's everything is about minimizing what the guy did and putting the burden on the woman to forgive, move on, da 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 da. Even her own mother might say the same thing. So it's a lot. Exactly. It's a lot for a woman to be able to say, no, this is just not acceptable. Society essentially grinds you down into, just accept this. At least he does this. He provides here. He does. And so a lot of people just accept stuff that, to me, frankly, is unacceptable. Because there's that societal pressure. Where are you going with 5 kids? All that. And nobody sits down with the guy and says, why are you doing this to your family? Because it's expected.
Yeah, they say they just go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because someone said
similar expectation on his part to sacrifice and do all that. Yeah.
Yeah, because someone said to me last month that it's normal for a man to want to misbehave. I said it's not true. Because I said infidelity is a choice. And he was trying to make me understand that no, it's normal. I said, so if it's normal for a man to have sex with every woman he's attracted to, then he will rape anybody on the road, on the highway, anything. Yes, since you say it's normal and he can't control it, but it's a choice because you have to, okay, fine. You can't control who you're attracted to sometimes. But 2, you make up your mind, like in Nigerian terms, to go and toast the woman. Make up your mind to pick a date, pick a place, a location for you to have dinner, get to know her. You pick a conducive environment for the activity. And even the activity itself is a process. Because if you say that it just happened. I couldn't control myself. I
Right.
have this very sarcastic aunt, and she will say, then our privates should be on our foreheads. So because if you could not control it, once you see the person, you headbutt that person. Once you headbutt the person, you've had sex. So I think that the society has tolerated so much. And the reason why our mothers and our grandmothers tolerated all these things and stayed was because at that time, the men were providers, 90% providers. So it's more or less like saying, you know what? Yes, he beats me, he cheats on me, he's giving me STDs, but he provides for the children. It was more about the children. I've heard people back then, when people are talking about how good a wife is, they will say, when her husband was being buried, she almost jumped into the grave. So they had to hold her back. So even if the man was a whatever, you have to make that attempt in traditional societies. I want to jump in. And one day I was just curious. I said, why not just let her jump in and fall in and see?
Yeah, who's going to take care of the kids? Excuse me.
Then later they'll say, oh no, because of the children. But now why we have more separation and divorce is because women now are economically empowered. So for that reason, we didn't inherit the silence of our mothers. Now we are able to say, you can't treat me like that. I deserve better. Growing up, there were a lot of things I did not understand about man-woman relationships. But the day I came to understand that what one man won't do for you, another man will gladly do it. Oh, according to Oprah, that was my aha moment. Oh, that was my aha moment. I'm like, huh? What one man won't do, another man will gladly do. But I don't know what is going to change that. It's beginning to change, but it's going to be a very long journey because we still come from a society where you are defined by, people don't meet you. Oh, what's your name? No. Whose wife is she? Back in the day when you're growing up, whose child is she? So when will we because somebody said, as a woman in Nigeria, even if you become the president, as long as you are not married, even if your husband is a drunk, there's a position you get to where they say, someone said to me, this lady in Nigeria had risen to this position where she needed to get married. And the man she married, some people say she bought the man, but they said, we don't care. As long as the man as long as she can say she is married. She was recently given a very, very prestigious position. And somebody came online to say, oh, how come this position was given to her with just her father's name? Where is her husband's name in all of this equation? And I'm wondering, you are supposed to be here celebrating her. Women encourage. So sometimes we women too.
No, but it's not sometimes we women too. We are all affected by growing up in a patriarchy, and women are not immune to that. When I said what happens with women, it's almost the mother, your aunts. Those are the people that will tell you to put up with nonsense.
Oh yes,
who love you are the ones who are actually going to tell you, stay. Why are you? That's our society, and as you said, as future generations become more empowered, have their own means of income, because that's a lot of the historical reason. A lot of the historical reason is this is the provider. I have no other source of income. I have no way to make ends meet. So we are seeing a change, but it takes time for culture to change. You still have your grandmother or your great grandmother. You still have people around who are used to that model, who are like, okay, this is the way things are. This is the way society is, fit in. But there are also women. So both of my grandmothers were widowed early.
Okay.
And my mother was also widowed early. So just navigating Nigerian society as a child of a single mother opens your eyes to a whole lot of different things, right? And you have to navigate in a different way. It really made me notice many of the things that people either think women can't do or say women shouldn't do. My mom had to do it all. She had to be father and mother to her kids because my dad died. And so once you've seen that, this is possible, because part of it is also not knowing what's possible because you don't see examples around you. So it's like, okay, I have to put up with this nonsense because there's no other option. Once you realize there are other options I think the society will change, but it will be very slow.
Oh yeah, it will be very slow. Lide said women are the biggest enablers of patriarchy.
Yeah,
Yes,
in many
we are.
ways, yes. Yeah.
In many, yes, I think so. We are. We're the biggest enablers. Okay, so messenger now.
Messenger RNA.
Oh, messenger RNA. Oh, that's how it's pronounced. Messenger RNA. Okay, so this is not you taking us into the future.
Yes.
Yeah. So my question here was the prison jail, hospital jail, which I didn't understand because I was thinking about it and I was like, the possibility of having that. Let's say you had that hospital jail in Nigeria, what will happen? Then I now saw,
It won't
okay,
work in Nigeria. Well, first of all,
you will
there's
break the
something
code.
similar where they deny you if you can't pay. So, but
Yeah,
not a jail. It won't work in Nigeria. Nigerian society is flexible enough. It won't work.
yeah. In Nigeria, what they do,
US is structured enough that it would work, and that's what's scary.
yeah, in Nigeria, what they do is, like I remember when was it when my mom had my brother? Yes, the woman on the other, I think the woman on the other bed had a set of triplets, and her husband was a motorbike rider. So of course they couldn't afford the injections and so on. And there was this very important injection they needed to take before they would discharge them. And they said to them, once you pay your bill, you'll be given your babies will be given the last injection. So because of that, this woman, she spent extra few weeks in the hospital because her husband couldn't raise the money. So I was just wondering when you have such an honest society, and I thought, okay, why not just walk away? And then that was where I read when I got to the part of the chip.
Yeah.
That person that was set ablaze.
Yep.
And
that's where Nigeria is different. Nigeria is more flexible in that way. In Nigeria, you could walk away. You could, yeah. The US, so the very structure that makes it attractive for people to come and want to live in the US or Canada or whatever can also be the thing that works to your disadvantage when there's trouble.
That keeps you in bondage.
That keeps you, held down. And I work at a medical school, and I've worked at hospitals and medical schools my entire career. And in the US, so the UK has the NHS, Canada has universal healthcare. So it's kind of hard for people to understand, non-Nigerians to understand what it means to essentially get a diagnosis of cancer, know that your bill is going to be millions, and decide, okay, I'm not going to put that burden on my family. I'm just going to die. It's inconceivable to most people in a society that has universal healthcare, because somebody says, I don't want my grandchildren to be paying off that debt. I don't want, because I think it's not dischargeable. And it's also interesting to be in a society where people look at healthcare as a privilege rather than a right. Because I view it as a right, but there are people in the US who emphatically believe it's a privilege. And if you say, everybody gets something, cancer, well, were you always healthy? Did you smoke? Like, they'll always find a reason to blame the individual. But there are things that happen to us that are not because of anything we did, and they're not our fault.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
And so how do you, especially, okay, if you have a child that's born with, congenital defects or whatever, that child is never going to be able to work to get the insurance to pay. Society, in my view, has an obligation to help people, because not everybody's going to be in a position where they can find a job that has insurance and then pay for their healthcare and so on. And even with insurance, sometimes the part of the bill that you're paying is like insane.
Yeah.
And so I think in many ways, I was trying to shock Americans in like, this thing is so bad. There are people that go into debt. There are people that lose their homes because they have to mortgage take a second mortgage on their house to be able to pay medical bills. And these are things they didn't anticipate. Like, it comes at you, you aren't expecting to get a diagnosis of cancer or lupus or whatever it is, or multiple sclerosis. The bills are insane. And it's a capitalist society, so it's like, yeah, whatever the market will bear. If this drug is 20,000 a month, okay. The US, unlike Canada or the UK, doesn't negotiate drug prices or
No
anything.
negotiation.
You're at the mercy of the market.
Wow.
And the market is like, if you can pay 20,000, okay. If we can charge you 20,000 for this pill that you have to take every month, okay, we will. There's nobody saying, that's insane, that's not right. And so this was sort of a thought experiment, taking it to an extreme where, okay, the hospitals, because they know you can't pay, they're like, okay, you stay in the jail, you work for the hospital to pay off your debt, and then you're now there, permanently. And there are very few Americans that like that story. And I've had a lot of pushback, and a lot of people say realistically that couldn't happen. And then some people are like, actually, it's happening, not in the sense of a physical jail, but people who are working off that debt till today. Yeah.
There's this controversial documentary, a filmmaker. I can't remember. Chubby white guy.
Oh, Michael Moore. Yeah.
Yes, I saw that documentary about 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
When he did that, and one of his greatest antagonists eventually had his wife in hospital and couldn't pay. Yeah. And he was the one who paid off that woman's debt. And he spoke about how hospitals were abandoning patients in front of buildings.
Yeah.
Yes, and cameras actually caught the hospitals.
Yes.
Yes.
You're an expense. They can get away with. Another thing they do is dump, especially people who are unhoused. You dump them in an area where you basically get a cab, you distract them from the hospital, you dump them in an area very far from your hospital, so it becomes somebody else's problem. That is.
And they say America is God's own country. Lide, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, well, that's capitalism. The last one you guys just said. But prior to that, even here where we have universal health coverage, it's what's universal about it is you can go to the hospital with a headache or whatever, a cold, maybe get a mammogram, all of those things without robbing the bank or owing anyone, because they just swipe your card, right? When it comes down to being real sick, it's not that universal, It's not that universal. Like you mentioned, multiple sclerosis, all of this long-term.
Dental doesn't cover that.
All of those long-term, progressively,
chronic diseases. Yeah.
Thank you. That declines, maybe sometimes even slowly, but progressively. All of those things requires a lot of things that are not covered by the universal healthcare system, like adapting your home. I have a patient with multiple sclerosis that has about 15 specialist doctors, like name it. Any specialist you haven't heard of, he's got it. And that's because he was lucky enough to work 20 years and had insurance at the time, and that's what's paying for everything. So yes, there's universal healthcare. So we're already living in the future. We're already living in it, whether we like it or not. Like people are paying it off. People are choosing to die early.
What?
I've participated in MAID. I don't know if you've heard it. It's medically assisted.
So Canada has that. The US still doesn't. The US still doesn't.
For a reason. They don't have it for a reason, because of capitalism, right?
I think it's called euthanasia, because I know I'm
That's just a general word for it. That's just a general word for it.
You can't, Louisa, you can't use that word though.
What's that, euthanasia?
No.
You can't use euthanasia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because so in Canada it's medically
assisted.
Yes,
medically assisted in dying.
Yes, I've participated in that, but they're not going to let that happen in the US for the same reason there was a rapid release of the COVID vaccine, because a lot of the people that sustains with the medical issues that sustains your capitalist medical system were the first ones dying to COVID, right? So somebody had to bring that out. So it's not the future. We're already living in the future one way or the other. There is
Yeah.
no chip. There's no
Yeah.
chip in our system yet, but we've
Yeah.
got credit ratings, we've got
Exactly.
mortgages that are
Exactly.
going
They're already
into.
the things that hold you
Thank
down
you.
and bind you. Yeah.
Yeah, like and the mortgage delinquencies, all of these things. And apparently it used to be like that in Canada. People used to go bankrupt trying to get medical help. And that's why universal
Canada
health care
changed. Yeah.
will put it into system. But it's never gonna happen in your Trump you know,
So and the
yeah,
that's
go
the
ahead.
reason why I if you notice, I said there are states that have universal. My state of California has approved universal healthcare. They just have to figure out how to finance it. Same thing in Vermont. So there are states where people have said, yes, we like capitalism, but we don't think that healthcare should be at the whims of the market, because it's just too. You don't know when you're going to get a chronic condition that is hereditary, that you just don't know. And so there should be a way for society to have a safety net for that.
Okay.
How do you pay for it? That's the thing that keeps America sort of convulsed in this, well, it's too expensive. No, it should be an individual's responsibility. And I think
And it has to sustain. I
like
have
what
to
you
say.
have in Canada, where you have a combination of universal and private. I think the NHS, they have that too in the UK, where you have NHS, but you can also get private insurance for other things. If we even had that in the US, then there's many. So I work in a setting where there are people who basically have medication for diabetes. They're cutting their pills in two. You can't afford a dose, and you're trying to logically break it up into smaller doses, but that's not how it works. That's not how the medication works. And you can see people are trying their best, but in a way, I feel like society has failed them, because your representatives should be able to say, this makes no sense. Why can't the government, like even getting the government to be able to negotiate drug prices, which every other country does. So medication is made in the US. Canada negotiates, okay, it will be, I don't know, let's say $50 a month for the average patient. The UK negotiates, and then in America, it's $5,000 a month. And everybody's okay with that. It just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't
And
make
so you have people in northern states, they get buses together, they go into Canada, and Canadians should be worried about this, by the way. They go into Canada to get the cheaper drugs and come back, or they go to Mexico. This happens. To me, it just makes no sense.
That's what I was saying. Even the universal health system is not sustainable. It's because as we get sicker, and we have poor people, poor people from north of the border, south of the border, from the US trooping in, it's not sustainable. We are suffering already. We just don't know it.
Right.
We have to start paying something into the healthcare system. We have Dr. Lola here, if she can attest to that. Lola, you have a clinic. Are you there, Lola? Lola?
I think Lola is in the meeting.
Oh, okay. So yeah, Lola is a psychologist. A lot of her patients can afford to pay.
Sorry, yes, I'm here. I'm back
Lola,
now.
how many of your patients can afford to pay out of pocket for whatever you're giving them? How many percent would you say?
Very limited. Well, I mean, it depends. It depends, I think, because most people have insurance.
I'm just saying our healthcare system is not sustainable. Eventually, we're gonna have to start paying something into it, like even $100 a year or something,
No, but that's fine. Society can say.
Exactly. I think in comparison to what America has, we're doing great.
Yes.
America is on another level. Like people are losing homes. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. And for a country that calls themselves, God's own country, whatever it is they call themselves, they're like the most ridiculous place where healthcare, people are dying on the streets. I mean, I was looking at a video about Oakland, California. This is no better. In fact, Moshi is better. Oshodi is better than what I said. For real, because of the homelessness, the drugs. Like, it is so crazy. No, America is, I don't know. There's somebody has
America
predicted
has
that
a
they are going down.
it has a two-tier system, and it's really interesting because in the journals, in the academic journals and all of that, in the academic medical centers do the most cutting-edge research possibly in the world, okay? And they publish on that. And then you have someone in a neighborhood. So I work in South Los Angeles, which is, it's called a medically underserved area. There's not enough doctors to match the number of patients I need to see. And, you have somebody go blind because they're waiting to see a doctor 3, 4, 5 months.
Oh, wow.
Diabetes, they need to have their eyes checked. This is something you do lasers, there's laser photocoagulation surgery. Nobody should go blind. But because there's not enough physicians and there's not enough, this person is uninsured or underinsured. So they go to the county, the free system.
Okay.
And you're waiting and waiting and waiting. And I'm like, in those settings, it's almost essentially like being in a developing country. But nobody talks about those settings because you can talk about the people doing robotic surgery and AI and the cutting edge stuff that's happening in the Harvard Hospital over here. And that's all people want to hear about. When you actually encounter the system wherever you are, what you're getting might not be that robotic surgery. Americans like to talk about the shiniest and the best things. But the reality for most people is not that shiniest and best. It's like only a few people are able to afford that. But then everybody's striving for that. And so they forget that
let's not even get into child, childbirth mortality rates. Let's not even get into
it's a big
in undeserved communities. Let's not even talk about the inequality there.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
it looks like a lot of doctors didn't know about, especially for Black women, about preeclampsia and all these. They just know. So you have somebody, in fact, the most dangerous period for Black women, besides the actual childbirth, is the 1 month after. A lot of women die then.
Oh, wow.
The blood pressure spikes after.
Wow.
Nobody's looking after. I've heard of people getting seizures by themselves at home. And that, it's really
because Americans they can't afford to stay in the hospital.
Yeah, exactly.
The moment they give birth, they're leaving.
Yeah.
Because we know families here in Nigeria, Canada, wherever, where they went to have their kids in the States. We're talking $20,000 for one night stay. Right?
Exactly.
Just give.
Exactly.
So they can't afford to stay longer, whereas in some other places like Canada, at least they'll still give you 2 or 3 days to stay. In America, your release hours, because nobody wants to pay those hefty fees of, I can't even believe that America is that way. Every time I think about it, it boils my blood boils.
It's very ridiculous. Sad. Well, it's already after 1.
I know.
Oh, nice.
And I
could go on.
It's like let's take the book picture because I have to go.
Yes, please, we need to.
Louisa, it's like we're on a girls' trip and we're just chatting away.
Yes, but
and we lost track of time.
Exactly.
Please, for people who have their books, if you have your copy.
Okay, hold on.
Let's see. Yes,
let me put myself in the best light. There we go.
Oh, nice.
Okay, I got it. Well, Lola, I would like to say thank you so much. Are you working on anything new before we let you go?
I am, but it's gonna take a while because my day job is very demanding. Okay. But I am working on my.
Okay. So please keep us in mind. We will be in touch again. We'll reach out again. I just want to say a very big thank you. Thank you for responding to my emails. There are some people I write to and they never get back to me. Yeah, so thank you for responding to our email. Thank you for joining us today for this amazing conversation. I usually post the videos on YouTube, and then so that I can post the link in our closed group.
Okay.
Who are not here so they can watch when they have time to watch. So thank you very much. And
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed this discussion.
me too. Thank you so, so much. Have a lovely Saturday.
You too. Bye.
Thank you, Lola. Bye.
Bye.